everyone, welcome to our podcast. This is my story. I'm your host, Karen Poitras, and we're going to hear about the weird reality of RAD. If you're one of our loyal listeners, welcome back, and if you're new to our podcast, welcome here. If you are new, make sure you head over to our channel and check out our welcome info episodes 1 and 2, so you can get properly introduced to what we're talking about when we talk about reactive attachment disorder and therapeutic parenting. So either way, it's great to have you join us here today. This podcast is interviews with parents and kids and professionals who all are sharing their stories on a wide range of experiences, anything from their craziest happenings or moments that they've had to sharing their journeys of healing. Today is March 17th, 2020, and you're listening to episode number 3. Our title today is Our Son Broke Through His Bedroom Door. Joining me today are Jason and Ashley, who are amazing therapeutic parents who are going to share their story about living through foster care, adoption, finding out about trauma and how to deal with it, and how they got started in therapeutic parenting and how it's helped their family. They have some pretty crazy stories to tell, so I'm really excited to share this episode with you. So let's jump into it. So welcome here. Thank you for being on our podcast. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yes. I am Jason. My wife is Ashley.
Hi.
We live in California. I'm a software consultant, and she stays home with our 4 kids. And our oldest 2 kids are 13 and 12, and they're biological siblings, biological sisters, actually. And we fostered them for 2.5 years before we adopted them. They were 1 and 2 when they were first place with us. Our 3rd oldest is our son, who is 9 years old. We fostered him for a year. Then he reunified with his bio mom. And then a year later, he was back in the system, and we adopted him then. And our youngest is a 7-year-old biological daughter.
You guys sound busy.
Yes.
So what is your story, or what has your journey been from adopting your kids or getting them in foster care kind of up until now? What is your story in dealing with that, finding out they had trauma and learning about RAD and therapeutic parenting?
One thing that people should know about me is before we got our girls, I was a preschool teacher for 2.5 years. I had students from 18 months to 2.5. And I volunteered with church kids. I'd been babysitting. I knew kids pretty well. I spent a lot of time with kids. And pretty much the very first day we met our girls, I knew something was off. Our youngest, who was 18 months, would walk up to complete strangers at the park and wrap her arms around their legs, hold her arms up to people in the grocery store to hug her. Very clearly not what a normal, healthy, attached child does. So early on, I knew these kids had some issues. The hardest part, though, was convincing everyone else that there were issues. Mm-hmm. I noticed that family members, people at church, everyone just thought, oh, well, you're new to parenting, or, oh, all kids have tantrums. Really? All kids have 3-hour rages that break down doors and destroy things? Right. I don't think so.
Or all moms think their kids are different, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or later on with our daughter, Madison, oh, you just think your kid's special. She doesn't have special needs. I'm like, no, she has a learning disorder. I can tell. So first of all, I was trying to convince therapists, teachers, my family, everyone that things were not right and we needed help. And the fact that I was trying to convince people also just was draining.
Right, especially our oldest, who was very, very charming.
To everyone else.
And then she would come home and beat up on her mother.
Yeah, I literally,
right.
I was the target, so I would get hit. And
she'd kick your knees out from under you.
Yeah, But for me, I did not realize this until I had my girls. I am a fighter. So when it comes to fight, flight, or freeze, I'm a fighter. So when I had this little 3-year-old come at me fighting, I would just automatically go into defense mode, which isn't very safe. And so I would have to figure out ways to keep myself safe so that we wouldn't get in this fight with each other. And she knew how to trigger me. So that was really tough. And I needed a lot of help my own work, my own therapy to deal with my own feelings so that she couldn't trigger me. But that also took a lot. So yeah, it wasn't until years into it, about 5 years into it, that we finally got help. And we tried Love and Logic. We went to parenting classes that the schools offered. We did Karen Purvis's Empowered to Connect conferences and tried her work. We even started a Nancy Thomas webinar with Strong Sitting and tried it and came home and failed. But so we tried a lot of things and none of them worked until we went to a Nancy camp up in Oregon where we could actually live it for a week and finally get tools to make a difference.
Yeah. And how long had you had them before you went to camp the first time?
5 years. We'd had our girls for 5 years. We'd had Austin on and off in that time. And in those 5 years, we'd had a daughter get kicked out of school and end up homeschooling. She would literally get out of a car driving down the street to not go to school. We'd be hours late to school every day. We'd had our son have accidents, constant accidents, violence towards me, towards each other. Our oldest had punched her sister so hard it knocked the wind out of her. Just the level of scary violence in the house, it wasn't just sibling rivalry, it was.
And these, what she's saying, are not one-time things. These are constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not, because that's the thing. Everyone's like, oh, siblings hit siblings, but not to this level.
Not to the point that the youngest sister is scared of the bigger sister.
Exactly. Yeah. So what is something or a special part of your story that you would want other parents to know if they are using therapeutic parenting or if they're thinking of adopting or doing foster care? Something that you think would be important for people to find out about or know about?
One thing for me is my journey with the girls. We'd had them for 2.5 years, and then we fostered again, our son. And at this point, I learned a lot. I learned about the importance of bonding early on. With our daughter, Madison, I mentioned that she wanted to be held. So I got an ergo. I just carried her in the wrap as much as she'd let me. And she and I had a great bond because of that. And so with our son, I just did that from day one. He was 15 months old, and I said, I'm going to treat you like an infant. We're just going to do this thing. And it was actually hard for me because I knew he was going to go back. We knew the plan was reunification. And I was struggling to let my wall down, but he was such a sweetheart. My wall just crumbled and we attached and bonded. And in that year, Love and Logic Parenting did work with him. He was a great 2-year-old. We actually had our biological daughter that year, and he was a great big brother. He loved his little sister. He was sweet and really well behaved. In fact, I was kind of surprised at how well behaved he was. But towards the end, when he was reunifying, he would go with her for a week and he'd be home on weekends, and his behavior would just start to go through the roof. And we eventually just stopped really giving him boundaries because it would make the weekends rough. But that year back with his birth mom is when most of the trauma really occurred. And when he came back into our care a year later, that was when we really saw the trauma. And
yeah, he wasn't just a different child from when he reunified. He was far, far more traumatized than when he was first placed with us at 15 months.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell the story of him punching you in the face.
Yeah. The first time I enforced a boundary on him, I picked him up to get him away from where he wasn't listening to how to play appropriately, and he punched me in the face.
He was 3.
Yikes.
And that's not what a 3-year-old does.
No, not usually.
So that was my first, okay, we need help. Because with our daughter, we could kind of isolate her and I could get Jason to back up, but we could not deal with 2 kids who with extreme behavior. And this was before I even knew what reactive attachment disorder or RAD was, but I knew we were dealing with extreme behavior and I was looking for answers. And
yeah, I mean, if I'm restraining one kid and she's restraining the other kid, who's watching our other 2 kids?
Exactly.
There were times that would happen, that they would both need to be physically restrained.
Yeah.
And that's what got us. And I think if we hadn't gotten to that point, we might not have found some of the techniques we found, and we would have survived, but I don't think our oldest daughter would have done very well, because with the techniques we've learned, she's really finally starting to thrive. So
Right. Yeah. And then how did you come about finding about RAD?
Well, we had done books and like videos and webinars, and nothing had really clicked. So we were looking for something hands-on. And that's when Ashley found there was a camp in Oregon run by Nancy Thomas. And so that was something hands-on. And we said, because, you know, we have a script to follow and the kid doesn't read their lines right.
Exactly.
Would you like a do-over? No. I know what you want to do.
There was no answer in any other program of what you do when they say no.
Right. So,
like, I don't know.
So and I mean, even with her, it said you wait, but we didn't know what that looked like because we had I think read one of her books maybe.
I'd been to one of Nancy's webinars at a foster parent training, and they talked about the 3 VIs and the strong sitting and everything, and they said wait, and I'm like, I did wait, and they didn't strong sit. Like, what do I do?
Right, we go to camp and it's like, no, really, wait. Hours and hours and hours.
Maybe
sometimes.
3 days. And I'm like, how do I wait 3 days? I have stuff to do. No, you don't.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so you need to clear the calendar. Yes, that was when it finally clicked. Yeah. You can't have anywhere else to go and anything else to do to parent these kids.
So that was the big thing is like how much you have to wait, and because you can't fix the kid, so you got to wait until they're ready to fix themselves. But also some of the silly little things like the alarms on the door. We didn't do that at first.
Yeah, it took us like 6 months to do it.
Yeah, after the camp, and we got it, and that was the first night Austin slept through the night since he had been because he had all this anxiety of not feeling safe, and once the alarm was there, he knew that he couldn't get up without us finding him, and he felt safe and he slept.
And then we moved to our new house 2 years ago. One of the first things he asked us is to put an alarm on his window.
Yeah.
He asked for a window alarm. So we're like, all right, you want one? Absolutely. So that also showed us that it really helped him.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I just want to throw in here, because I know you were foster parents. What would you tell other foster parents who have kids with RAD as far as, you know, using these techniques, but the kid still has a chance of going back to their birth family?
First, I had a couple things. First of all, you never believe what the social workers say about what's going to happen because they don't know either. It's reading tea leaves. So you know, Austin was supposed to be a 4-week placement with us.
Up to 4 months.
They said probably less than a month, and it's just a short-term placement because we knew Ashley was pregnant at the time, and so we, you know, dealing with all that at once. We had him for a full year before he reunified, and then he came back, and so we've adopted him now. Clearly, I mean, that was supposed to be short placement.
It's a long month for you guys.
And our oldest girls, they were supposed to, they were going to deny services to the mother, and it was going to go right to adoption in 6 months. And it was 2.5 years that we fostered them for before they were up for adoption.
Yeah, because
so the predictions are wrong.
So you have to parent them like they're your child, no matter what social services is telling you.
I mean, within the law, of course.
Yeah.
There's limits to what you can do. But
therapeutic parenting is fine and a great reaction. And when you really do the balance of the structure and the nurture, and people can see it, then people don't doubt it anymore. But you have to feel like you have the authority to parent these kids because you are the parent 24/7. And so I would say if you have any fears of what outsiders are thinking, don't, because it works and it's best for the kid and it's best for your family.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so now I want to ask you what the craziest thing is that's happened. I know you guys have a few. I think you have a top 5. We'll count down.
Top 5 list.
Okay.
Number 5. I'm doing odds. Okay. That's probably when our son broke through his bedroom door. This door was not locked, but he still broke through it to come out so he could get out without opening the door.
Setting off his alarm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 4, when our daughter was being super violent, I told the therapist that we were going to get her in residential treatment for a month so I could have a break. And the therapist said, "You're a mom, you don't get a break."
That one was the craziest one to me.
Yeah, that was my number one too. But yeah.
She also after that sentence said, "Don't you think this will disrupt the placement?" And I'm like, "Placement? She's been adopted for 4 years at this point."
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Time for a new therapist after that.
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much. We both ended the relationship after that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Number 3 is when our son decided that one particular corner of his room was a urinal. That was the place for him to go pee.
That's always lovely.
Preferentially to the toilet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And this was even before we had door alarms, so there was no reason for him not to leave his room.
Right. Yeah.
So starting at age 3, our daughter would have multiple hour-long rages, and I'm not even kidding. There was 45 minutes to 2 hours, and in fact, there was one that was 2 hours, and I had to go pick up some kids from school, so Dad had to come and take over. But from even age 3, our daughter was so violent that I would have to call my husband home from work to hold her because I could not contain her anger. We used to call her the Tasmanian devil because she would be little, like, spinning crazy, destroying anything in her path, ripping books, puzzles, toys. Like, it was unreal.
Finding the heaviest thing she could lift and throwing it at you or throwing it at the window.
Usually me.
Usually
Always me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if she closed the door, then she'd throw it at the window.
Then she'd throw it at the door.
Or the window.
Yeah. And they're strong when they're that mad. They do all kinds of crazy stuff.
So that was pretty scary.
Yeah. And then what was your number one craziest moment that you've had so far?
That was when our daughter decided to climb through a broken window and cut her hand on the glass and needed over 60 stitches.
And this was not a first floor window, right?
It was a first floor window, yes.
Oh, it was a first floor window. Okay. Yeah. And that was during a rage, right?
Yeah, during a rage.
2.5 hours into a rage.
Yes.
Yeah, that one tops it as pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that is the end of the first episode. So thank you for joining us today, and it's great hearing your story and just, the real life of what you guys live with every day or did live with in the past, because I know it's a little different now. So we will hear from you on the next episode, and we're going to do a question answer session. All right, so that was the first part of our interview with Jason and Ashley. Make sure you join us again next week to hear about what they have to say about the challenges of having kids at different stages of healing, what they do for self-care, and what people have done to support them and help them out in the past. So that will be our Q&A session next Tuesday with them. Make sure you tune in for that. It'll be episode number 4. All right, thanks for joining us this week on our podcast. And be sure to check out in the description on our YouTube channel for more information about our podcast, about the Radish Ranch. And be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notifications so you can get our episodes straight to your inbox every Tuesday morning. Also, check us out on Instagram and Facebook. You can find us on there under the Radish Ranch. And our podcast episodes and release updates will all be posted on there as well. The music for this podcast was written and recorded by French Press specifically for us, and it's all used with permission from them. This podcast is brought to you by the Radish Ranch. I'm your host, Karen Poitra, and I will see you next week. Stay awesome.